Have you ever noticed that the moment you started seeing things clearly, people began to drift away? That the more you awakened to life's deeper truths, the lonelier your path became. If you're feeling this right now, if you're wondering whether something is wrong with you because your circle has shrunk while your awareness has expanded, I want you to know something crucial. You're not losing friends because you're becoming difficult. You're losing friends because you're becoming real. There's an ancient Taoist story from the Warring States period, around 300 BCE, about a sage named Master Zhuang who lived by a river. Zhuang had once been surrounded by dozens of students, colleagues, and admirers. But as his understanding of the Tao deepened, his home grew quieter. One day, a former friend visited and asked him directly, "Master, why do you sit alone now? Where have all your companions gone?" Zhuang smiled and pointed to the river. "Watch the water," he said. "It flows downward naturally, effortlessly. It doesn't try to flow upward to please the mountain. When I stopped flowing upward to please others, those who needed me to flow their way simply found other streams." This is the first truth about awakening that most people don't tell you. Consciousness doesn't make you popular. It makes you real. And reality is something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Let me share something personal with you. 5 years ago, I had a calendar full of social obligations. Every weekend there were gatherings, parties, surface-level conversations about nothing important. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I pretended to care about gossip that felt like poison. I nodded along to opinions I didn't share, just to keep the peace. And I called these people my friends. But deep inside, something was shifting. I started reading the Tao Te Jing. I started meditating. I started questioning everything I'd been taught about success, happiness, and connection. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, my phone stopped ringing. At first, I panicked. I thought I was doing something wrong. I tried harder to fit in. I forced myself to attend gatherings that drained my energy. But the more awake I became, the more exhausting it was to pretend. Have you felt this? That suffocating feeling of wearing a mask that no longer fits? The Tao Te Ching, written by Laozi around the 6th century BCE, contains a passage that changed everything for me. Chapter 20 says, "Other people are excited, as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless, like an infant before it can smile. Other people have more than they need. I alone seem to be missing something. I am a fool. Oh yes, I am confused. Other people are bright. I alone am dim. Other people are sharp. I alone am dull." When I first read this, I felt seen for the first time in years. Laozi wasn't describing depression. He was describing the natural state of someone who has stopped performing for the crowd. He was describing what it feels like to awaken in a world that's still asleep. Now let me be clear about something important. This isn't about being superior. This isn't about looking down on people who haven't awakened. That's a trap that many people fall into, and it's the opposite of true Taoist wisdom. The sages of ancient China never claimed to be better than anyone else. They simply recognized that transformation creates distance, not because you're judging others, but because you're no longer resonating at the same frequency. Think of it like this. Imagine you've been living in a house with all the lights off. Everyone around you is also in darkness, and you've all learned to navigate by touch, by memory, by following each other blindly. Then one day, someone turns on a light in your room. Suddenly, you can see. You can see the furniture, the walls, the door. But everyone else is still in darkness. When you try to describe what you're seeing, they can't understand. They think you're speaking nonsense. They might even become angry because your words make them uncomfortable. Not because you're attacking them, but because your vision reminds them of their blindness. This is why awakening creates loneliness. Not because awakened people are better, but because they're seeing something different. Let me tell you about two people I knew. I'll call them Chen and Wei. Both were in their early 30s. Both worked in corporate jobs. Both felt a deep dissatisfaction with life. They both started exploring Taoist philosophy at the same time, attending the same meditation group, reading the same texts. But their paths diverged dramatically. Chen began his awakening journey and immediately started posting about it on social media. He shared quotes from the Tao Te Ching, talked about his meditation practice, and subtly criticized people who were still asleep. He used his awakening as a badge of superiority. He looked down on his old friends for caring about material success, for watching mainstream entertainment, for living unconsciously. Within 6 months, Chen had indeed lost most of his friends, but not because he had awakened. He lost them because he had become arrogant. He confused consciousness with condescension. Today, Chen is still lonely, but his loneliness comes from ego, not from enlightenment. Wei took a different path. As Wei awakened, he became quieter. He didn't announce his transformation. He didn't post philosophical quotes to prove his growth. He simply started living differently. He began saying no to social events that felt draining. He stopped engaging in gossip. He listened more deeply when people spoke. He asked genuine questions. And yes, some friends drifted away. But Wei didn't judge them. He understood that their paths were different. He blessed them silently and let them go. And something beautiful happened. As his old circle shrank, a new circle slowly formed. People who were also awake, also seeking, also questioning. These weren't hundreds of friends. They were 3, maybe 4 deep connections. But these connections were real. Today, Wei is still alone often, but his solitude is peaceful. He has found his people, even though there are fewer of them. Do you see the difference? Chen lost friends because he used awakening as a weapon. Wei lost friends because he honored awakening as a natural transformation. One created loneliness through judgment. The other experienced solitude through authenticity. So here's the question you need to ask yourself right now. If you're losing friends as you awaken, which path are you on? Are you losing people because you're judging them? Or are you losing people because you're simply changing frequency? Pause for a moment and reflect on this. Write down 3 names of people who have drifted away since you began your awakening journey. Next to each name, write honestly, did I push them away with judgment? Or did we naturally drift apart because we were moving in different directions? Take your time with this. This reflection will reveal everything. And I want you to come back and share what you discovered in the comments below. Tell me, I realized I've been more like Chen, or I realized I've been more like Wei. This honesty is the first step toward true awakening. There's another layer to this that the ancient Taoists understood deeply. It's the concept of Wu Wei, or effortless action. Wu Wei doesn't mean doing nothing. It means not forcing. When you truly awaken, you stop forcing relationships. You stop forcing conversations. You stop forcing yourself to be someone you no longer are. And this non-forcing naturally creates space. Some people flow out of that space, and that's okay. During the Tang dynasty, around 750 CE, there was a Taoist hermit named Yin who lived in the mountains. Historical records tell us that Yin had once been a government official, well-connected and influential. But after a profound spiritual experience, he left the capital and retreated to solitude. People from the city would occasionally visit him, asking why he had abandoned his position and friendships. Yin would always give the same answer. I didn't abandon anything. I stopped holding on. And what was meant to stay, stayed. What was meant to go, went. This is Wu Wei in action. Awakening doesn't make you cut people off. It makes you stop clinging. And when you stop clinging, the truth reveals itself. Some people were only in your life because you were holding on desperately. Some people were only there because you were playing a role. When you release the role, you release the people who were only interested in the character you were playing. Now, I know this is painful. I know there are nights when you lie awake wondering if you made a mistake, wondering if awakening was worth the loneliness, wondering if you should just go back to sleep, go back to pretending, go back to that full calendar, an empty heart. I've been there. I've had those thoughts. And I want to tell you something that kept me going during the darkest moments of this transition. In the Zhuangzi, one of the foundational texts of Taoism written around 300 BCE, there's a passage about a massive tree that's so gnarled and twisted that no carpenter will use it for lumber. The tree stands alone in a field, untouched, while all the straight, beautiful trees around it are cut down and used for building. The gnarled tree lives for thousands of years because its uniqueness protects it. Zhuangzi says, since you're useless to others, why not plant yourself in the vast emptiness and wander freely in effortless action? When you awaken, you become like that gnarled tree. You're no longer useful to people who want to use you. You're no longer convenient for people who want you to stay small. You're no longer entertaining for people who want superficial connection. And yes, this means you stand alone more often. But it also means you're no longer being cut down. You're no longer being consumed. You're finally growing in your own direction, at your own pace, according to your own nature. This is the gift of awakening that nobody tells you about. Yes, you have fewer friends, but you also have more freedom. You have more energy. You have more authenticity. You have more peace. Let me give you a practical exercise right now. For the next 7 days, I want you to practice what I call the silence of the sage. This is a simple exercise rooted in Taoist principles. Every day, for at least 1 hour, maintain complete silence. No speaking, no texting, no social media, No input, no output, just silence. During this hour, observe your thoughts. Notice how many of your thoughts are about what other people think of you. Notice how many of your thoughts are rehearsing conversations, defending yourself, explaining yourself, justifying yourself. Notice how exhausting it is to constantly perform for an invisible audience. On day 3, I want you to return to the comments and tell me, how many of your thoughts were about other people's opinions? Give me a number. On day 7, come back again and tell me, has the number decreased? This exercise will show you exactly how much energy you've been wasting trying to maintain relationships that were never real. Try this now. Start today. Your first hour of silence begins the moment you finish watching this. There's something else the ancient Taoists taught that's critical to understanding this loneliness. It's the principle of yin and yang. Most people misunderstand this symbol. They think it means balance in the sense of having equal amounts of light and dark at all times. But that's not what it means. Yin and yang teach us that everything has seasons. There are seasons of expansion and seasons of contraction, seasons of connection and seasons of solitude. When you're awakening, you're in a season of yin, of turning inward, of darkness not as evil but as gestation. You're in the cocoon, and cocoons are lonely places, but they're also necessary places. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by staying social. It becomes a butterfly by isolating itself completely, dissolving into liquid, and reforming. If the caterpillar tried to maintain its friendships during this transformation, it would never become what it's meant to be. You are in the cocoon right now. Your old self is dissolving. Your new self is forming. And the friends who knew the caterpillar don't recognize the liquid you've become. They can't see the butterfly you're becoming. So they leave. And that's okay. That's necessary. That's natural. But here's what you need to understand. This season of yin will eventually shift to yang. This season of solitude will eventually shift to connection. But when you emerge, you won't go back to your old connections. You'll form new connections with other butterflies, with others who have also transformed, with others who understand the language of awakening. I've seen this pattern over and over again. People awaken, they panic about losing friends, they grieve the loneliness, and then, usually around the 2-year mark, something shifts. Suddenly, they start meeting their people, not in the old places, not in the old ways, but in new spaces, in meditation groups, in philosophy classes, in online communities, in chance encounters that feel like destiny. And these new connections are deeper, richer, more real than anything they experienced before. So if you're in the lonely part right now, I need you to hear this. You're not at the end. You're in the middle. You're in the chrysalis. Keep going. There's a practice in Taoism called embracing the uncarved block, or pu. The uncarved block represents your original nature before society shaped you, before expectations molded you, before the need for approval carved you into something you're not. When you awaken, you're returning to the uncarved block. You're shedding all the carvings that were never yours. And as you shed these false layers, the people who love the carved version of you naturally fall away. Here's a powerful exercise to help you embrace your uncarved block. I want you to write a letter to yourself, but not a normal letter. I want you to write from the perspective of your uncarved block, your truest self, to the version of you that's been shaped by others. Start the letter with, "Dear performed self, I am writing to tell you that I'm ready to come home." In this letter, describe all the ways you've been performing for others. Describe all the masks you've worn. Describe all the friendships you maintained out of obligation rather than genuine connection. Then, describe who you really are beneath all of that. Describe your true values, your true interests, your true pace of life. Write this letter by hand if possible. Take at least 30 minutes. Don't edit yourself. Let it flow. When you're done, read it out loud to yourself. This will be one of the most powerful moments of your awakening journey. And if you feel comfortable, share one sentence from your letter in the comments below. Just one sentence. Let's create a community of uncarved blocks, speaking our truth to each other. I'll go first in the comments. Now, let's talk about the wrong way to approach this loneliness. Because there is a wrong way. The wrong way is to romanticize it, to make yourself a martyr, to say, "I'm so awake that nobody understands me, and I'm special because I'm lonely." This is spiritual ego. This is the trap. True awakening doesn't make you special. It makes you ordinary. It makes you simple. It makes you humble. Laozi was clear about this. In the Tao Te Jing, chapter 67, he describes the 3 treasures: compassion, frugality, and not daring to be first in the world. Not daring to be first means not elevating yourself above others. It means understanding that awakening is a return to naturalness, not an ascension to superiority. So yes, you have fewer friends now. But you don't have fewer friends because you're better than everyone else. You have fewer friends because you're being honest. There's a massive difference. One comes from ego. One comes from authenticity. Check yourself regularly. Ask yourself, am I enjoying this loneliness because it makes me feel superior? Or am I at peace with this solitude because it's allowing me to be real? The answer will determine whether your path leads to enlightenment or to isolation. Let me tell you what happened after I lost most of my friends. For about a year, I was truly alone. No weekend plans, no constant texting, no social obligations. And during that year, I discovered something profound. I discovered who I actually was. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't constantly reacting to other people's expectations. I wasn't constantly adjusting my personality based on who I was with. I was just me. And at first, that me was terrifying because it was unfamiliar. I had spent so long being what others needed that I had no idea who I was without an audience. But slowly, gradually, I started to take shape. I realized I loved long walks in silence. I realized I loved reading ancient texts and sitting with their wisdom for hours. I realized I preferred deep conversations with one person over loud parties with many. I realized I moved slowly, thought slowly, processed slowly. And in a world that values speed, my slowness had always been a source of shame. But in my solitude, my slowness became a gift. I could finally move at my own pace. This is what awakening gives you. It gives you back yourself. And yes, the price is loneliness. But what you're really losing isn't friends. What you're losing is the exhausting performance of being someone you're not. There's a story from Chinese folklore, though the exact dynasty is unclear, about a monk who could speak to birds. People would travel from far away to see this miracle. They wanted to learn his secret. The monk would always tell them, "I don't speak bird language. I stopped speaking human noise." And in that silence, I could finally hear what was always there. When people asked him to teach them, he would say, "Stop talking for 1 year. Come back after. Then we'll see." Most people never came back. They couldn't handle the silence. They couldn't handle the loneliness of not filling every moment with noise. But the few who did come back, the few who completed the year of silence, they could hear the birds too. And they understood that the monk hadn't gained anything magical. He had simply removed the obstruction. This is what awakening is. It's removal, not addition. You're not gaining some special power. You're removing the noise that prevented you from hearing truth. And as you remove that noise, the people who are made of noise drift away. So let's do another practical exercise. This one is called the 72-hour observation. For the next 72 hours, I want you to notice every time you're about to speak or text or post on social media and ask yourself, am I saying this because it's true, or am I saying this because I want approval? Don't judge yourself. Don't stop yourself. Just notice. Keep a small notepad with you, and every time you catch yourself seeking approval, make a small mark. At the end of 72 hours, count the marks. This number will shock you. This number will show you exactly how much of your communication is performance rather than truth. Share your number in the comments after 72 hours. Tell me, I caught myself seeking approval times in 72 hours. This awareness is transformational. Try it now. I want to address something that might be bothering you. You might be thinking, but humans are social creatures. We need connection. Isn't this loneliness unhealthy? And you're right. Humans do need connection. But the Taoists understood something crucial. There's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected from others. Solitude is the peace of being connected to yourself. What you're experiencing during awakening isn't loneliness, even though it might feel like it at first. What you're experiencing is solitude, and solitude is medicine. In Taoist monasteries throughout history, monks would go through periods called closed-door cultivation. During these periods, sometimes lasting years, a monk would stay in a small room, alone, focusing entirely on inner cultivation. No visitors, no conversations, just self and Tao. This wasn't punishment. This was considered the highest form of practice. Why? Because the Taoists understood that true transformation happens in stillness, not in constant stimulation. You're in your own version of closed-door cultivation right now. You didn't choose to go to a monastery. Life brought the monastery to you by removing the distractions of false friendships. Accept this gift. Don't fight it. Don't try to frantically fill the emptiness with new people before you've completed your cultivation. Let the silence teach you. Let the solitude transform you. Here's something practical you can do today to shift from loneliness to solitude. Create what I call a solitude ritual. Choose one activity that you do completely alone, with intention, at least 3 times per week. It could be making tea mindfully. It could be sitting in nature for 20 minutes. It could be journaling. It could be practicing Qigong. The specific activity doesn't matter. What matters is that you do it alone, you do it intentionally, and you do it regularly. This ritual becomes your anchor. It trains your nervous system to associate solitude with peace rather than pain. Start your solitude ritual today. Choose your activity right now before you move on with your day. And commit to 3 times per week for the next month. Then report back in the comments. My solitude ritual is Qianzi, and after 1 month, I feel Pianti. There's a paradox in Taoist philosophy that's essential to understand. The Tao Te Jing says, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name." This means that the deepest truths cannot be communicated through words. They can only be experienced directly. And this is why awakening creates a communication gap between you and those who haven't awakened. You're experiencing something that can't be fully explained. You're seeing something that can't be fully described. So conversations become frustrating. You try to share your insights and people misunderstand. You try to express your transformation and people dismiss it. Not because they're bad people, but because words fail when trying to describe the wordless. This is another reason why your friendships dissolve. You're no longer speaking the same language. And I don't mean English versus Chinese. I mean the language of surface versus the language of depth. The language of distraction versus the language of presence. The language of ego versus the language of essence. These are incompatible languages. And when 2 people don't speak the same language, communication breaks down. Connection becomes impossible. But here's the beautiful part. Eventually, you'll meet others who speak your new language. Others who understand silence. Others who appreciate depth. Others who value presence. And when you meet these people, even if the conversation is brief, it will feel like coming home. You'll recognize each other immediately, not through words, but through resonance. I remember the first time I met someone else who had awakened. We were at a bookstore, both reaching for the same copy of the Zhuangzi. We laughed, and she let me take it. We started talking, and within 5 minutes, I knew she had walked through the same fire I had walked through. I knew she had experienced the same loneliness. I knew she spoke my language. We've been friends for 3 years now. We only see each other once every few months. We don't text constantly. We don't have surface-level chats. But when we do connect, it's real. It's nourishing. It's worth the wait. This is what you're waiting for. Not a crowd. Not constant stimulation. But a few real connections with people who see you and understand you. And these connections are coming. But they can't come until you've completed your transformation. The butterfly can't meet other butterflies while it's still in the cocoon. So be patient. Trust the process. Trust the Tao. Now let me share the final piece of wisdom that helped me survive this lonely period of awakening. It comes from a passage in the Tao Te Jing, chapter 16. Empty yourself of everything. Let the mind become still. The 10,000 things rise and fall while the self watches their return. They grow and flourish and then return to the source. Returning to the source is stillness, which is the way of nature. This passage taught me that everything is cyclical. Your friendships fell away, but new friendships will rise. You experienced loss, but you will experience gain. You're in winter right now, but spring is coming. The Tao moves in cycles, not straight lines. Nothing is permanent, not your loneliness, not your solitude, not your pain. Everything returns to the source, and everything emerges again, transformed. So when you're feeling the weight of this loneliness, remember, this too shall pass. But also remember, this too is necessary. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. Let me leave you with one final exercise, and this one is the most important. I call it the gratitude practice for lost friends. Take a piece of paper and write down the names of all the friends you've lost since your awakening began. Next to each name, write one thing you're grateful for about that relationship. Maybe they made you laugh during a difficult time. Maybe they supported you through a breakup. Maybe they introduced you to something important. Find the gratitude. Then, write a final sentence. Thank you for walking part of my path with me. I release you with love. This practice is crucial because it transforms bitterness into acceptance. It transforms resentment into peace. It honors what was while accepting what is. Do this practice tonight. Write it by hand. Feel the emotions that come up. Cry if you need to. And when you're done, you don't need to send these letters to anyone. This is for you. This is your closure. This is your peace. If this practice brings up something powerful for you, come to the comments and simply write, "I found peace." That's all, just those 3 words. And we'll know you did the work. I want to end with the story of Master Zhuang that I mentioned at the beginning. After Zhuang told his former friend about the river flowing naturally, the friend asked one more question. "But Master, are you not lonely?" And Zhuang replied, "I have the mountains, I have the sky, I have the water, I have the Tao, I have myself. How can I be lonely when I am in such abundant company?" This is the ultimate truth of awakening. You don't have fewer friends because you're losing something. You have fewer friends because you're finally seeing what was never there. And in that seeing, you're finding what was always there. The eternal, the true, the real. You're not losing friends. You're finding yourself. And that self is the greatest companion you could ever have. The ancient Taoists knew this. The sages knew this. The awakened have always known this. And now you know this too. Walk this path with courage. Walk this path with honesty. Walk this path with compassion for yourself and for those who fall away. And know that on the other side of this loneliness is a peace that no crowd could ever give you. You're exactly where you need to be. Trust the journey. Trust the Tao. Trust yourself. And remember, you're not walking alone. All of us who have awakened are walking beside you, in spirit, in truth, in the eternal now. Come back in 7 days and tell me how your practices are going. Tell me what you've discovered. Tell me what's shifting. We're in this together, even in our solitude, even in our silence, even in our awakening. The path is long, but it leads home. Keep walking.